Hey guys, UHD here, and I'm back with another reaction video. And today I'm going to react to the fifth part of the fanfic reading Something Sweet to Bite by Emogak. And yeah, this is the last part of me reacting to Something Sweet to Bite. And yes, I wonder what happens at the end. I mean, that evil Candy Mare was already dead because Twilight and the other unicorns use their magic to take it down. And yeah, I want to see how part one goes. Okay, let's get started in 3, 2, 1. Click. Emogak.
By the time it was all over, Twilight and her friends were all soaked in scarlet. Twilight's once white lab coat was a lost cause, dyed almost completely crimson by the stinking fluids that gushed from the Candy Mare, and from her friends' dead and broken bodies. She, Pinkie, Scootaloo, and Sweetie Belle returned to the library together, the ordeal rendering them silent as they walked like automations through the streets. The mare had snapped out of her trance long enough to assign a few ponies to gather up the remains of the dead, helping the injured to the hospital and cleaning up the town square. After giving out the orders, she immediately broke into hysterical laughter and was led away by a few kind ponies. Twilight suspected they would be electing a new mayor soon. She thought about that as they trudged through the dark streets, about who might be the next mayor, about the library, about anything really, anything at all. Anything to keep from thinking about what they had just seen, what they had done, and the sad, hateful little monster that had hurt so many. She had to distract herself, lest she too would need some kind ponies to guide her away. The rest of the town seemed relatively untouched by the slaughter that had happened in their midst. It was likely that many were not even aware of what had occurred. Fillies and colts still went from house to house trick-or-treating. Spike waved cheerfully to them as they came closer to the library. Without saying a word to one another, the 4 ponies decided to go around the back entrance and hose off before going inside. Twilight dumped her costume in the trash bin before opening the back door and entering her home. The library was still decorated with bats. Twilight found herself unconsciously counting them over and over. She didn't want to think about what she had to do next. The letter she would have to write to Celestia. What lesson had she learned from all this? Was it even a lesson worth learning? This is what she contemplated as she guided the 2 exhausted children upstairs. After everything that happened, she couldn't dream of sending them home just yet. Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle could spend the night tonight. Grabbing a few towels for herself and the shivering pair of friends, Twilight dried herself and the 2 fillies off thoroughly before tucking them into her bed. If need be, she'd sleep on the guest bed tonight. Right now, all that mattered to Twilight was that she hold the girls tight as they vented their emotions. They wept over having witnessed so much carnage and the loss of so many friends. Twilight could feel tears burning in the corner of her own eyes as she at last allowed herself to think of what had happened, what she had done, what they almost all had done. Technically, they weren't guilty of cannibalism, but it was close enough that she feared many would be scarred for life by participating in that alone. Thinking about the faces of all those that had surely tasted on that cursed candy, Twilight bit her lower lip until it bled to try and hold the sobs in check. Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle managed to cry themselves silently to sleep. Perhaps their thoughts were the same as her own. Twilight didn't want to wake them with her own sobbing. Before she might lose control completely, she left her bedroom and went downstairs where Pinkie Pie sat, the head of her puppy costume sitting sadly next to her on a low table. There was no removing the bloodstains from around its mouth, but the pink pony seemed loath to part with it.
How are they holding up?
Asked Pinkie Pie immediately, then after taking a good look at Twilight.
How are you holding up?
They're sleeping now. I wish they could wake up and this would have all just been a bad dream. I wish we could all wake up. Twilight's words failed her as she tried to gather herself. It was getting harder each time. As for me, I don't know how I'm doing. I want to be strong. I need to be strong. But I've never seen or heard anything so terrible in any of my studies in my entire life. Not even the chaos of Discord was half as horrible as this.
I know.
Was all that Pinky said as she wrapped her forelimbs around Twilight in a tight hug. How can you be so strong, Pinky? Asked Twilight. And the rest of us were watching that thing try to piece itself back together. You just took care of things. Her friend just shook her head.
No, shh.
She squeezed her friend tightly as she said,
Twilight, you were the strong one. When all I could think of to do was tell every pony to run, you actually stood up to that monster. All I did was eat a few pieces of candy.
Pinky gave a self-deprecating smile. Her words made Twilight feel a little better, but she knew it would be a long time before she would ever feel like she had done anything worthwhile.
I'd better head back to Sugar Deep Corner soon to check on the cakes. Will you be alright on your own?
Twilight nodded, though she wasn't at all sure she really would be. She could feel fear gnawing at the pit of her stomach. More fear than she'd felt when she was facing the Candy Mare down. Facing down a monster was somehow easier than facing the consequences of one's own actions. As she guided Pinky to the front door, the fear seemed to grow inside her. She was about to tell Pinky that she wouldn't be alright, that she didn't want to be left alone, when Spike opened the door and stumbled into the pair of ponies.
Twilight?
Stammered Spike. The front of the baby dragon's costume was soaked in
Oh
blood.
no.
His sharp teeth were bared in a
Is
horrible
that
grimace.
is that monster alive?
No, there was no other expression he could make.
Let's hope
His
not.
lips and most of his face had been ripped off. He hissed through his bloody teeth and said,
I think there might be something wrong with Rarity.
before collapsing on the spot.
Oh no.
Just outside,
Don't tell me that
the
monster got ready.
jack-o'-lantern lit the dark, foggy night. Twilight didn't remember carving any pumpkins. The orange glow washed over the white, ghostly figure that stood on Twilight's front stoop. The thing chewed casually, callously, blood trickling from her mouth as she slurped down the purple dragon flesh. The spider ornament in her hair was quite fetching, though the rest of her body was oddly warped.
Is Twilight
and
eating
swollen.
Spike?
Oh, Rarity! What are you doing? Screamed Twilight. The white unicorn's head tilted at her name, and she began to walk slowly inside. As she entered the library, her skin began to brown and blacken. A smell that reminded Twilight of campfires tickled her nose. That was when she realized why Rarity looked so strange and puffy. Her body was nothing but marshmallow. The creature that had been Rarity made a strange, keening moan and slunked back into the shadows. The lights inside the library began to flicker on and off as the wind rose out of nowhere. I don't understand! What's going on? Why is this happening? Twilight turned to Pinky, desperate.
Is Twilight gonna die?
I don't know, Twilight.
Is Twilight gonna die?
I don't feel so good.
The pink pony doubled over in pain, clutching her stomach as she retched up a gout of blood and candy. She collapsed into her own vomit and began to writhe on the floor in agony.
Oh, it hurts. Oh, it hurts so bad. Twilight, help me. Please, help me.
To her horror, her friend's skin began to crack, blood seeping from the fresh wounds in Pinky's eyes and ears. Her big, blue, bloodshot eyes were forced up out of their sockets and hung by their nerve endings as she gurgled. Her screams were choked off as her own intestines began to rise from her mouth, spilling with a wet slap on the floor of the library. At last, Pinkie Pie's body popped like a gore-filled balloon, splattering viscera all over the library. Something new slowly stood where a pink party pony had once been. It still looked like her after a fashion. Darkness engulfed the library as every light died, save the harsh, orange glow coming from the pumpkin on the stoop. Even by the dim light, however, it was plain that the pink pony's flesh had taken on the consistency of bubblegum, and her mane and tail were now as cotton candy. In the sudden darkness, there was silence in the library. It didn't last long. A susurrant of voices whirled through the books, flipping pages and flapping the wings of fake bats. From Pinkie's former flesh, something light and shiny began to move, began to piece itself back together. A shattered skull took shape, rolled and turned so that the empty eye sockets gazed up at Twilight. A spine began to wiggle back from the base of the thing as it giggled and squealed.
I knew it!
Over
The
and
monster
over,
is alive!
around what was left of one of Twilight's best friends. Already, the Candy Mare was coming back.
Nightmare night.
A voice giggled. A new jack-o'-lantern flared to life just below the pinky monstrosity's grinning face. Her teeth were pink needles of rock candy.
What a fight.
Another voice joined in, as the thing that had once been Rarity came inside and politely closed the door behind her. As the door clicked, Twilight ran, stumbling in a panic in the dark. She had to make it upstairs. She had to save the children, if no pony else. She wouldn't let them be devoured in their sleep. As she clambered up the stairs, the twisted monsters that had once been her friends came calmly, if jerkily, behind her. As she made it to the landing, 2 small, grinning pumpkins awaited her. In their dusky light, Twilight could see it was already too late. 2 pairs of gumdrop eyes glistened at her from a single gelatinous form that writhed amid the mire of blood and tangled sheets. In death, Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle had fused into a single grotesque entity. Perhaps it was better that they had gone in their sleep.
Give us something sweet to fight.
Their twin
Is the
mouths
Candy Mare
spoke
gonna
as
kill
one.
Twilight?
Twilight could hear some pony hammering at the front door. She wanted to shout, "Run! Get away!" However, even as she filled her lungs to scream, she realized there was no hope. A fear churning inside her guts began to spread, filling her with pain beyond imagining. She could feel her skin stretching, her bones popping, and something living moving beneath her flesh. It was like thousands of tiny mouths biting her, eating her from the inside out. What was worse were the thoughts of images playing out behind her eyes. So much death, so much pain. In the endless darkness of moonless existence, one could scarcely call night. But she could see it. But she could see the fire-lit circle of life, and that bright light and heat pained her deeply. All life must be extinguished if she were to know the peace and safety of the dark, if she were to escape the fear that replaced every fiber of her being. Twilight writhed on the bathroom floor, not even noticing the blood seeping from her every orifice. She just wanted it to stop. She just wanted to die. When the toothy grins of her former friends drew close to her pain-wrecked body, she didn't resist.
At least this way, the end will be swift.
She thought. She wouldn't become like them. The creatures that had been Rarity and Pinkie Pie started to eat her with gusto, beginning with her stomach. They buried their faces deep into her bowels and
Please, no.
slurped her flesh and
Please,
fat from the
no.
inside out.
No!
Even as they ate,
No!
a 5th jack-o'-lantern flared alive.
Oh
It was her
God,
own
why did I
bizarre
get myself into
expression
this?
carved into the orange surface. She could tell instantly. With her eyes trained to see magic, it was no ordinary candle that burned inside the shell, but the light of her very own life. A life that was being taken from her. The flicker of its flames were the last thing Twilight saw before the light faded from her eyes completely. Something new rose from the tattered ruin that was once the element of magic. Something giggled as it saw the world through black currant eyes. Something whispered, "Hungry." A knock on the palace main entrance thundered through the halls.
Luna?
It was very strange, thought Luna. The Nightmare Night Ball had been thrown in her honor and had ended hours ago. Her poor, sweet sister Celestia had already stumbled to bed quite some time ago, giving leave to most of the servants to take their rest as well. Luna suspected she might have to raise the sun in the morning in her sister's stead. Not that she minded. It had been one of the most wondrous nights Luna could remember. It was true she had ended up having to scrap her plans to visit Ponyville as she had promised, but she was sure that the children would understand. It was the dead of the night now. However, the moon having long ago set, usually only herself and the night guard were active at these wee morning hours. In fact, it was odd that one of the guards hadn't answered the knocking that threatened to wake the whole palace. Though it was their lot to patrol the night guard did take on their duties of the palace guards when Luna was in residence. Where were they? Striding quickly, yet gracefully, Luna went to the grand door in the main hall and used magic to unlock and raise the ponderously heavy portcullis. With that done, she winced as the knocking sounded once more, louder this time. With a less exertion, Princess of the Night opened the golden double doors, preparing to demand what exactly was going on. The words turned into a gasp of shock. She knew what happened to the guard now. The drawbridge had been left down, and the gates to the castle walls were open as usual. A sea of ponies teemed and ululated as far as the eye could see. Each grinning face was lit by a jack-o'-lantern that sat glowing cheerfully at their hooves. That was disturbing enough, but what was worse were the dead bodies broken in half and half-eaten piled at the palace door. Standing atop the pile of bodies, mouth twisted into an expression of almost painful joy, the candy mare grinned hungrily down at Luna, the one creature who'd ever managed to slow her down. As the mare's candy corn grin parted, the sound of her childlike voice echoed in unison from the army of candy ponies.
Trick or treat.
That was it? Well, that was quick. It's Anna Clem? Kate Bug. Wow. So that was the end of Something Sweet to Bite. How did it go by quick? That was only like 20 minutes. That was fantastic. I never survived a fanfic reading like Emogak's that long. Usually the other parts were over like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Yeah, and sorry that I didn't talk too much, but yeah, sometimes I would just like to flow my attitude low with while I'm watching this video. But you know, this fanfic was good, but all the gore and stuff. And yes, and you know, I have been thinking that I should react to sad fanfics. Of course, you guys would get to see me cry if you guys want me to see me cry in a sad fic. Let me know in the comments down below and suggest which one I should react to first. Once again, guys, thanks for watching and ahoy!